episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor. Welcome everybody again to another episode of our show, bringing you a truly fascinating guest today, helping to create a better tomorrow on many different fronts. We have the honor today of being joined by Mr. Lameen Abdul-Malik, Coffeepreneur, intellectual philanthropist, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, and currently executive director of Honest Management LLC in Dubai. Mr. Abdul-Malik was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize with the International Atomic Energy Agency back in 2005, where he worked for 14 years. He has over 20 years experience in international development, primarily in Africa, where he was responsible for developing the IAEA regional strategy to help over 41 African countries use nuclear science and technologies to address their various development challenges, including healthcare, agriculture, radiation safety. Mr. Abdul-Malik started his career working at the UK Department for International Development, where he worked on international trade, debt relief, economic and social research. And alongside all of that, he has become very passionate throughout his career about coffee. He has written extensively about coffee for over the last 13 years, including at his blog, From Coffee with Love, which was featured on CNN. And he recently launched his own espresso brand of coffee in collaboration with City Beans in Dubai. In June of 2019, he was invited to participate at the International Coffee Organization and the EU Coffee Symposium on UN Sustainable Development Goals, ultimately interacting with various global players in the coffee value chain and ways they can improve the current status of things. Following his work at IAEA, Mr. Abdul-Malik worked as a director of the Future Investment Initiative Institute, a Riyadh, Saudi Arabia-based foundation focusing on a variety of ideas in sustainability, healthcare, education, artificial intelligence, robotics, and ultimately helping find their way to materialize, scale, and create a positive, sustainable impact on humanity via these tools. And now, as executive director of Honest Management, Mr. Abdul-Malik has set himself a goal of ultimately having a positive impact on at least 1 million people's lives within the next 5 years, using his various skill sets in development, education, and of course, coffee. Mr. Abdul-Malik has his University of Exeter Business School degree, his MBA in International Management. We have a lot to get into today. Lameen Abdul-Malik, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks a lot, Ira, for inviting me, and looking forward to having a very fruitful discussion with you this afternoon.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, I'd love just to start things off like we typically do by handing our guests the floor for a little bit to talk a little bit more about their background. If you can take us on a bit on that early journey, everything from where you grew up and a little bit on how you got from finishing up your MBA to the International Atomic Energy Agency. I think that'd be a great way to lay the groundwork for everything.
All right, thanks a lot, Ira. So, I mean, where do I start? Perhaps I start with, so basically, I actually grew up in Nigeria since I was about 12 years old. And one of the things that I loved when I was growing up was just the fascination of, you know, discovering different cultures. So actually, I used to draw aeroplanes when I was like much younger, and I actually wanted to be a pilot. I remember when my parents would take us on holiday to England. We always used to dress, you know, in our best outfit to go on the plane, and it was very, very fascinating traveling. But I think that's also important in terms of my future journey. Another thing from my childhood that I really love that you can see resonating with me now is I always loved sweet things, actually. So, you know, I always tell the story about when I was at school, and, you know, they'll go around the class and say, "What's your favorite hobby?" And all the boys were like, "Football," and I'd be like, "Eating." Everyone would look at me and think, "Eating?" I mean, I was a lot slimmer than I am now. But I think, you know, I'll come back to how that relates to, you know, my fascination with food and coffee in the future. And then when I was about 13, my dad actually got a job working in Vienna, Austria. He used to work for the OPEC Fund for Professional Development. And so we basically left Nigeria when I was about 12 years old, went to England, studied there, did my MBA, met my future wife, got married. And I was always interested in this aspect of international development and economics. And I actually said just doing that at university. I remember, one of my lecturers said to me, "Oh, what do you want to do when you leave university, Lameen?" And I said, "Oh, I want to work for the World Bank." And he was like, "Oh, that's impossible. You have to be really smart to do something like that." And I thought, well, that's what I want to do. So I got an opportunity to work for international development for the UK government back in 1994. And I applied what I did in terms of economic research. And then I did that for about 8 years, working international trade policy, helping developing countries able to understand international, very complicated international agreements.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually wanted to get closer, because when I worked in London, I was basically supervising donors, like supervising UN organizations. I thought, I want to get closer to their action, basically. So I actually applied for a job at the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is very unusual because it was basically using nuclear science and technology for development. Mm-hmm. So I'm not a scientist by any background after economics and MBA. I just thought, okay, it's very interesting to use that kind of technology to help countries in development. And one of the things a lot of people have heard about the IAEA, they think about nuclear watchdog and what's happening with Iraq, stuff like that, but I don't want to venture into that. The main area, actually one of the areas we talked about the IAEA having what we call the human face, is actually used for development. Mm-hmm. So you can use the technology for agriculture to create new varieties of crops. You can use it for actually studying human nutrition as well. And of course, one of the biggest things that I focused on was in terms of cancer management. So a lot of people know a lot about, if you talk about African disease, everybody says, oh yeah, HIV, malaria, TB, but a growing concern is actually cancer. And actually cancer already kills as much as HIV, malaria, and TB together. Not many people know that. They always think it's always just normal diseases. But one of the things is that in Africa, the lifestyles are beginning to change. So what happens is that when they start getting wealthier, they start to imitate Western lifestyles, mm-hmm. Western diets. It's fine if you have if you have a pizza and you're in Italy, northern Italy in the winter, you need all those carbohydrates to actually burn the fat. But if you're in a very humid, warm climate and you're not moving around, it's actually disastrous for your health. So that's one of the reasons actually cancer is actually increasing a lot in Africa. So when I joined the IAEA first in 2002, I actually had the Premier project for basically helping Zambia establish their first cancer hospital. Back then, I don't know how many thousands died on a monthly basis from cancer. But with the facility up and running from 2007, they treat about 1,500 patients a year now from cancer, which is actually very, very good. And of course, one of the highlights working at the IAEA was in 2005, where we awarded the Nobel Peace Prize mm-hmm. for the organization. And one of the things was in terms of obviously trying to stop the second Iraq war that actually happened in 2004. And that's why we were actually awarded that prize. So my colleagues and I were actually awarded that prize. What people also forget, I always like to highlight, is that, so we got about $1 million prize money. And because I had the premier radiotherapy project in Africa at that point in time, I actually got 20% of that money for my project to actually help Zambia train oncologists, which are the doctors that are very versed in cancer too. So I actually benefited from that. My project per se benefited from the prize money from the Nobel Peace Prize to also help Zambia establish their first cancer hospital. So that's my journey up to the IAEA. And of course, beyond that, there's a lot more things, but let me know where exactly you want me to start focusing on.
Sure. No, it's really interesting because it's funny. A couple of years ago, I happened to learn about the First Lady in Zambia, Dr. Christine Kaseba, who she was trained as a surgeon, but cancer in Zambia has become a really major thrust during her time as the First Lady, and now she's working, I think, here at Harvard, talking about expanding access to cancer care in developing countries. So I think you might have started something,
Yes. Yeah. Before I left my position at the IAEA, actually Zambia had received a few other $1 million. Mm-hmm. So basically, one cancer center is actually not enough. So in fact, when I was looking at the IAEA, we have basically a formula for every 1 million patient. For every 1 million population, you need to have at least one kind of radiotherapy machine. And Zambia has about roughly 60 million people. Yeah. So we're actually going on to phase 3, expanding to build 3 more cancer centers actually in Zambia. Okay. So they're actually, it's quite a big prize. And as you rightly mentioned, yes, Ira, that the former First Lady, I'm not sure if she's the First Lady, was actually a surgeon, and she was spearheaded that effort to establish more cancer centers in Zambia.
Yeah. I always find it fascinating when I see these connections and talking to folks like you. So really amazing that your work led to this. So I mean, along the way, you're at IAEA now, and while you're at IAEA, you make your first foray into the coffee business during your time I believe in Cape Town, South Africa. Talk a little. I mean, introduce us, please, first to your personal love of coffee, and then also, was the IAEA cool with you getting in the coffee business while you were also involved in their development projects? Talk about a little bit how that worked for you at the time with the Escape Cafe.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll go back to my childhood. I mentioned to you that one of my favorite things was actually eating.
Yep.
I actually love cakes. So the thing, taste has always fascinated me. So basically what happened in 2004, my family and I actually went on holiday to Italy. My cousin's married to an Italian, and he gave me a mocha pot. He said, "Oh, make coffee in this." And I thought, okay. But what happened to me is that before, I have to confess, I was drinking Nescafe, then I moved on to filter coffee. My brother introduced me to filter coffee. So this was like a different experience completely. I thought coffee can taste differently from what I was used to. And I just got really fascinated by that concept. So for me, it was like, a whole new journey, like exploring something with my taste buds. So I started doing a lot of reading about coffee and espresso back then, because now what we call the third or fourth wave of coffee. So the second wave of coffee relates to the espresso, cappuccino, the kind of things that was kickstarted by Starbucks in the US. Right. And then in about 2007, there was a first of its kind coffee conference in London. So I actually used to go there on an annual basis. And it's been like a lot of coffee experts, speak to them, learn about coffee. I just thought it was really fascinating that this coffee bean can taste so differently, and the different processes and science behind it. And then I got so much knowledge. I thought to myself, I got all this knowledge. I just want to share it with the world. I said, okay, let me create a website then. So that's the birth of From Coffee with Love, which was actually August 2007. I started blogging. And I had a fascination also with James Bond. So one of my favorite movies was From Russia with Love when I was growing up. Sure. So I thought, okay, From Coffee with Love. So that's like, that kind of like mixes. And then going back to in terms of the IAEA. So one thing about the IAEA is that for professional staff, you can only actually work for 7 years at a maximum. Okay. So what happened is actually my first stint actually ended in August 2009 at the IAEA, and I applied for lots of jobs, like everybody, like any caring father will like apply to lots of UN jobs, and nothing came at all. Or I thought to myself, rather than me waiting for someone to give me a job, why don't I just start a coffee business? That's what I really want to do. I thought, okay, well, I want to do it in a different part of the world. I don't want to go back to London, because I go back to London, maybe over the end of my adventures, going back to my childhood again about wanting to be a pilot and traveling around the world. I thought, okay, let's go to Africa. I thought, okay, I've been to Cape Town a lot because whenever I used to go to Zambia, I used to go to Zambia once or twice a year. I always used to connect through South Africa to go back to Europe. I used to say, oh, let me spend a couple of days in Cape Town, just discover the city. I actually liked the vibe. It was a very European city. I thought, okay, what would ease the pressure of my family moving to Africa? So I need to choose the most European city in Africa, and that was Cape Town. So that's how it started. So I didn't get any job. I thought to myself, I'm not going to hang around waiting for someone to give me a job. I'm just going to move to Cape Town with my family, use my savings. I'm just going to move there and start one of my coffee dreams. And that's how basically, so from 2009 to 2012, I had my coffee business in Cape Town. And I actually went back to the IAEA in 2012 because we had a few things in our family, some tragedies in our family, and we were so far away from them. And the IAEA actually called me back in 2012. I said, oh, would you like to come up for your job? And I thought, no, I still want to run with my coffee business. But I just thought, you know what, I've done it. Let me see. I need to focus on other priorities in terms of like getting my kids like a proper education and stuff like that. Because even though, I had a bit of fame in Cape Town, to be honest with you. So one of the things I focused on that made me a little bit famous was my cheesecake. Mm-hmm. It took about 6 years to develop a special recipe because my wife actually loved cheesecake. And I said, okay, I'm going to make you the cheesecake that you're going to say, this is the best cheesecake of your life. So one afternoon, I can't remember what day it was, she goes, this is the recipe. This is the best recipe. I said, okay, that's it. So I actually made cheesecake. And then a famous food writer, back then, the main social media was actually Twitter. Yep. So I used to tweet a lot on Twitter. My coffee shop is called Escape Cafe. And I invited this famous food writer. I said, oh, come to my cafe, come and check it out. And she came to my cafe and she tasted my cheesecake. Oh my God, this is the best cheesecake in Cape Town. I said, really? She goes, yes. She goes, the first thing you have to do is you have to put the price up. So we to put the price up. And then she was also a food writer. So she actually wrote this double spread on me in a Sunday newspaper. And then that just took off. So I had people driving like 45 minutes to Cape Town saying, I'm coming for your cheesecake, please save me a slice. So we actually broke even, to be honest with you, within 11 months, but it wasn't enough to pay myself. So I pay all my staff, pay all the bills and all that kind of stuff. But looking after myself, my family wasn't enough. So when that call came back in 2012 from the IAEA, I did bargain a little bit hard with them. I said, okay, if you're going to take me away from my dream, then you need to increase my salary and give me this condition. And they were like, okay. I said, okay, fine. So that was the end of that part of that journey.
Got it. I'd love to try the cheesecake at some point, by the way, but we're major cheesecake fans here, but as well, and coffee fans. But we'll talk about that offline. So then following IAEA, you put in your time. Time for your departure. You transition from there to this Future Investment Initiative Institute, Saudi-based in Riyadh, and they give you a very broad purview here. I mean, everything from sustainability, healthcare, education, artificial intelligence, robotics. Talk a little bit about this. Okay, now you're transitioning from development to a really broad portfolio of stuff that has the ability to positively impact humanity. What was this all about? How do you, I was just sort of, how do you decide what you worked on when you got in the office in the morning? Talk a little bit about your time at FII.
So, I mean, obviously, my job at the IAEA actually finished, so my second 7 years finished in 2019. Yep. So I thought, okay, what do I really want to do? Where do I want to live in the world? And I said, okay, let me try living in somewhere like the UAE, Dubai. I've been fascinated by the city for a long time. I like the concept of opportunities. So what happened in 2020 during the pandemic is I did a lot of personal development, a lot of insights about really what I want to do, where I want to see myself in the next 5-10 years. And actually, when I just moved to Dubai, I actually got headhunted. So someone reached out to me on LinkedIn. And I said to them, I'm not looking for a job. I have a path. I want to set up a coffee business. I want to set up a consultancy. And they were quite persistent. So I said, okay, no problem. I'll speak to this person about whatever this is, but I'm not ready to work for anybody at the moment. So they spoke to me and said, oh yeah, we have this institution we're setting up. It's going to be a think tank. We want you to have the think tank part of it. I was like, really? Why do you want to hire me, basically? And so this is the power of social media, because basically they headhunted based on my LinkedIn profile.
Got it.
So, on my LinkedIn profile, I said to them, why did you like it? They said, well, it seems very authentic. So when I did my LinkedIn profile, I did not do it to impress anybody. I just did it to say, well, this is who I am. If you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, it doesn't matter. But I like that authentic part about me, and also the fun part about me, saying that I'm a coffeepreneur, for example. So say, okay, what this opportunity? We're setting up this think tank. We want you to be director of Think. And for me, I thought, wow, basically someone is going to pay me to think about how I can change the world. I thought, okay, well, I'm ready for another journey. I always believe that, whatever comes with it, you just go down that journey. You never know what would open up for you, for example. Don't close doors, especially if a door opens for you. And what I liked about it was the concept of, using AI, robotics, healthcare system. Healthcare systems, obviously, I was already familiar with, working for the UN for 14 years, also working in international development with the UK government. But it was like, I was in charge of curating ideas, developing thought leadership. And thought leadership, basically, I had to create a research agenda. So any hot topics along those 4 key areas, I could kind of highlight the topic that I wanted to talk about, like climate change, sustainable farming, trying to tackle falsified or counterfeit medicine. And basically, I have the idea, so can we tackle this? Can we do a topic on this? So that was quite fascinating. Like, having a blank sheet of paper and saying, okay, what do I want to tell the world about? So that was very fascinating. Also in healthcare, which I'm also already passionate about, we kind of linked that to SDG. So SDG 3 was what we focused on healthcare. It's sustainability. We looked at SDG 14, 15, and 16. There are lots of things. We're looking at, life below water, life above water, climate change, but not climate change from a different angle. Mm-hmm. And one of the things about climate change, people talk about climate change, net zero, but they always forget something about biodiversity and supply chains.
Sure.
So this is a very key area. Like now everybody's like, oh, quinoa is superfood, but what is it doing to the local population, and what's it doing to the environment? Because they're farming more quinoa than they used to before.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to be responsible? Or are we just going to focus on the superfood because everybody is selling it and it costs an arm and a leg if you buy in Europe? So bringing that discussion back and say, okay, what can we do about this? And is it sustainable? No, it's not sustainable. How can we address, what are the other aspects? Can we investigate growing it in a more sustainable environment in different parts of the world, for example? So that for me was very fascinating. And then, of course, one of the pinpoints of my career, my short career there was, my CEO challenged me to, he said, okay, Lameen, you're head of thing. I want you to give it, I want an index. I want an index that tells the world about something in health. I was like, okay. So I look back about the COVID pandemic, and one of the reasons why COVID actually spread very fast is because there are not enough specialists, what we call epidemiologists, to actually diagnose the disease when it first started spreading. So, you had doctors that were not aware of it. So, oh, it's just the flu, and they put a COVID patient into a ward of 30 or 40 people. And of course, the next 2 days, everybody's got this new thing they don't know what's talking about. So I said, okay, there's a gap in there. How can we inform the world about infectious diseases and how to stop the spread of it? So that was the idea about having a global infectious disease index, which we work with a very innovative company actually in San Francisco, Metabiota, and also with Accenture, which is one of the largest consultancy firms in the world. But they have a big section that focuses on research and innovation and AI. And the idea was actually to develop a tool, an AI tool, basically. So AI basically tracks data,
mm-hmm.
and this index basically tracks up to 60 pathogens on a daily basis. So if there's a particular disease in, let's say, in some village in East Timor, and then the doctor records it, that AI algorithm actually picks it and then begins to track it and says, okay, what's happening? Is it spreading? And if the deaths start increasing, then you can use that data to inform a local Ministry of Health. Hold on a second, do you know what's happening in your backyard? You need to address something. 5 people died from a particular disease last week. That's what happened with COVID. No one knew what it was about. And the same company we worked with, actually, they tracked the coronavirus in China before the WHO actually picked it up in December. So a very, very innovative company, and they use this algorithm. So that's how you can use AI. You use AI for different things. I discovered a lot of things when I was working there, in terms not just for diseases control, but you can use it for agriculture, to study like climate change, for example. AI is all about getting data and processing it. So, okay, if we're going to stop, this summer we had a lot of stuff to do with bushfires and a lot of flooding. So there is a tool that's not fully developed where you can actually use that and say, okay, what were the existing conditions that caused that? You can't stop fires and floods from happening, but at least you can prepare for it. You can mitigate it. So this is going to happen maybe in August 2025. What are we going to do to prepare so that we minimize damage and loss of life, more importantly? So those are the kind of things that I was working on when I was head of Think at the Future Investment Initiative Institute.
Outstanding. And, okay, and now we go from FII to the newest initiative. So Honest Management, Ideas-Based Cafe, changing the world one coffee cup at a time. And here you're bringing together everything that we've already now gotten into in your journey. We're talking coffee, sustainable development goals, the human mind and its potential to come up with solutions. Take us into this unique model of the Ideas-Based Cafe and what you envision looking out the next several years with this fascinating model.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we should try and look for ideally in our life is basically trying to merge all our passions together rather than keeping them separately. I read something really fascinating. I saw something really fascinating a couple of days ago where he said, how do you get a work-life balance? And the guy was like, what does that mean? That's, everything should be balanced. And I always go back to the concept when I had my cafe in Cape Town, where I had to be at my cafe every day at 6:30 a.m. Yep. And I never woke up in the morning saying I'm going to work. It didn't enter my mind. I was like, this is my passion. This is what I've been dreaming about. This is what I'm doing. Yep. So I was thinking to myself, okay, coffee has to have some sort of impact in my life, or have to have a channel for it. And what I learned just, working for the FI Institute just for 9 months was like, how you can use technology to leverage different things. And also, a lot of people have really fascinating ideas, but people they have a lack of self-confidence. So I thought, how can I empower people to think, no, you can change the world. You don't have to have a degree or a PhD or work for Goldman Sachs, one of these big companies, to have an idea to change the world. No, everybody has that kind of secret within themselves. They just have to believe in it themselves. So I thought about the idea of merging all that space into, maybe you can call it brand Lameen, for example. I thought, okay, what did I like about what I've done in the last 40 years? How can I merge that with my passion? How can we take that forward in terms of having an impact into our world? Because nowadays, everybody's a little bit more focused, but I would like to think everybody's a lot more focused on our world, our environment, our lifestyles, well-being, for example, especially what happened last year. A lot of people did a lot of reflection. And of course, what's happening a lot in the US itself is that they call it the Great Resignation, where, even I think in 1 month, like April this year, 4 million people actually resigned. That's crazy. So, a lot of people are thinking, okay, there's more to life than, just working flat out and chasing that new promotion, that new car, that bigger house. And I just think the world's waking up to, there's another part of the world. So I thought, okay, yes, I'm part of that. And I really believe in that. So I thought, okay, creating this kind of incubator space was an idea curation space where I invite people to say, okay, what are your ideas? And we can align that with SDGs. So this is still in infancy. So we can say, okay, this target of 2015 net carbon emissions, what does that really mean? And is there only one way to address that? Or does someone have a different idea about how we can do this? Can we do it using a new technology that perhaps someone has thought about and we can test it, for example? Like, one of the things when I was working at the FI Institute was like, can we use AI to prevent the next pandemic? And then I came across this company in San Francisco to say, yeah, we're doing something like that. So I said, okay, great. It's still in the infancy, but we can use that information to say, to inform ministers of health, for example, or governments to say, okay, yes, this is happening in your backyard. What can you do to prepare so that this doesn't happen in the future? Or you can mitigate the effects of a pandemic. So the 100 Ideas Cafe is something that I thought about earlier this year. And I thought, okay, having this concept of, 100 ideas to change the world over a cup of coffee. I always believe that whatever we were doing should always be serious. So I have this concept called serious fun. And it's actually serious, full stop, fun. So it's like serious about what you do, but there should always be some kind of enjoyment, some kind of fulfillment and fun in what you do. We only have one life to live, and life is too short for you to be miserable most of it. So I always think, I always like to search, I always like to go for the, the ultimate thing. So I always believe that you should do something because you want to do it, not because you're forced to do it, but you're inspired to do something and have an impact on yourself and the world around you. So that's kind of the idea behind 100 Ideas Cafe. Of course, one of the things is that I'll need to get some kind of sponsorship, because I don't want people just to think, oh yeah, I've got a great idea, because they will get demotivated if we don't see that idea become into fruition, for example. So that's one of the things I'm working on and trying to speak to some people and say, okay, what are your ideas about how we can make this, implement this? So I've got some concepts already I'm working on, and hopefully I plan to have some kind of brainstorming session in the next 2 to 3 weeks on that. Yeah. Excellent.
Let me, what's coming up? Any conferences you're going to be presenting at, TED Talks, anything that is on the calendar that we should be watching out for you in the coming weeks, per the cafe, but also in the coming months as we enter 2022?
One thing that's happening next week. So I'm actually going back to the Future Invest Initiative. So they have a big conference. It's one of the largest conferences every year. So it's taking place in Riyadh next week, 26th, 28th of October. And usually it has a lot of Fortune 500 CEOs actually attend that event, so world leaders. But I'm going to be there presenting on the Global Infectious Disease Index that I mentioned to you earlier on. I'm going to be moderating a session on that, and also talking about how we can use technology to prevent pandemics. So basically the AI focus. So that's the next. And I think that conference will be live streamed on YouTube. And then there might be a couple of other things that are not fully developed yet that might be taking place later on this year. Maybe if once they confirm, maybe I'll put that on my LinkedIn. There might be someone approach me to be a judge on the panel for entrepreneurs in the region. Let's see what happens with that. Yeah, and that's at the moment, that's what I'm focused on. And then just, excited for this new journey.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm going to be on your podcast. So that's another thing that's coming up.
in a couple hours. So
yes.
Well,
so,
yeah,
that's what I'm working on at the moment. Yeah.
Perfect. And we will link to all your social connections in the bio to the show. But really, really fascinating. I mean, I wishing you the best with all of this. You've had such an exciting journey, and moving it forward. Obviously, going to be successful with this, and it's going to be fun to watch this journey continue to unfold for you, and for everybody that's going to be listening to this particular episode across our podcast networks or watching on the YouTube channel. You've been listening to Lameen Abdul-Malik, Coffeepreneur, intellectual philanthropist, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. Check out his website, honestmanagement.org. Check out From Coffee with Love, his coffee blog, the Sippy Beans Cafe, and his espresso brand. Really, really fascinating, Lameen. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule. I know you had a long day for talking with us. Thanks for everything you're doing there. And as we like to say on our show, thanks for helping to create a better tomorrow through everything you've been doing and everything you're going to be continue to be involved in. Really, really inspirational story.
Thanks a lot for reaching out, and reaching out to me. And I'm grateful I had this opportunity to share part of my journey with you and your listeners. And all the best, and hopefully our paths will cross again.
Absolutely. That definitely will.